Unit 6, Political Geography, Part 2, Content Objective 6.4, explain the evolution of states and how they continue to evolve, and Content Objective 6.5, discuss how boundaries can cause conflict. As always, those content objectives will have I can statements that dig deeper into the knowledge. Content Objective 6.4, explain the evolution of states and how they continue to evolve. I can statements discuss key world regions where defining a state is problematic. 2. Define sovereignty. 3. Explain how states can vary in territorial size. Before we begin today in defining a state, it's important to keep in mind as recently as the 1940s, the world contained only 50 countries. As of today, of 2020, we have over 200 states. So in the short span of roughly 70 years, we've more than quadrupled the number of states in the world. And we've also learned that we've seen a shift with globalization from Unit 1. We've moved away from military alliances to more economic relations. And with that movement, we've seen the influx of statehoods granted. What is a state? It is a sovereign political unit. A state is synonymous with country. Human geographers will often use the term state, and some people get confused with nation. Remember, nation is a group of people that have allegiance to a particular government of a state. A state is the sovereignty. Sovereignty is the ability to control internal and external affairs and control internal domestic policies, control foreign policies, external affairs. Problems in defining a state. Korea was divided after World War II. It's the longest standing armistice in the world currently. They have separate governments. These separate governments have different political platforms as well as economic systems. And North Korea sees themselves as ruler of the Korean Peninsula. And when we look at Koreans, they're all the same nationality. They're Koreans. China and Taiwan, again, separate governments. However, through history, it's a very interesting history, but for what you need to know is Taiwan is a country that has a separate government that's aligned with democratic ideology and capitalist economic system, and China is a communist and a separate government, communist government, and it did open its economic system, but it's a more laissez-faire economic, capitalist economic system. China claims rights over Taiwan and has become increasingly more aggressive with acquiring or annexing Taiwan. Western Sahara and Morocco both claim land in the northwestern portion of the Saharan Desert. When we look at Korea after the World War II, again, it was one nationality, Korean. It still is one nationality today. So really what we have is one nation divided by two states. The two states that have sovereignty is North Korea's sovereignty controlling their internal domestic policies and foreign policies, and then South Korea sovereign controlling their internal domestic policies and foreign policies, external affairs. Here's a look at the most demilitarized zone in the world. And again, Taiwan goes back to Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong. Chiang Kai-shek fled to form a democratic republic of Taiwan, while Mao Zedong formed the Chinese Republic. And that shows you the wall of Western Sahara and Morocco. When we look at size of states, the largest state is Russia in terms of territorial units. Its other large states, second largest state is Canada, followed by the U.S., China, Brazil, and Australia. Smallest states, there's no requirement on the size of a state to grant it statehood or sovereignty, but small states are referred to as microstates. Most microstates are found as islands in the world. However, there are microstates in Europe such as Monaco, Liechtenstein, Andorra. Those are all microstates, but most are islands. Content Objective 6.5, discuss how boundaries can cause conflict. You should be able to recite key Key characteristics of the following shapes: elongated, compact, erupted, perforated, and fragmented. 2. Discuss how shapes can vary and cause internal and external problems. 3. Explain key elements of physical boundaries. Communication, borders, administration, and social unity is found within the shapes and sizes of states. We look at the 5 basic shapes. Compact, they have clear and easy communication and administration. They lack in resources, typically, depending on the size of the compact state. Elongated, they have poor communication, so they have distance decay near the ends of the elongated state where there's isolation, where common times we see separatist movements. Perruptions, they're land extensions for access to resources that were put there by European imperialists for trading, for global trade and large port cities. And perforated are completely surrounded by another state. So when a perforated state, inside of it, it has a fragmented state. So a fragmented state is separated from a country, and it can be by water as well. And landlocked states have no direct outlet in sea. So a perforated state inside of a perforated state is a landlocked state. Here's an example of a compact state. Here's an example of an elongated state in Vietnam, corrupted state in Myanmar, and a perforated state in South Africa. And the landlocked states are Swaziland and Lesotho. And we have a fragmented state with Kaliningrad as a part of the Russian Federation. Landlocked states, the most are found in sub-Saharan Africa. Try to identify the shapes of these states and also discuss their strengths and weaknesses. How does the location of capital city impact a state? Capitals are often the largest city and the economic center. They're there for communication, and their main objective usually is to eliminate distance decay and provide unity in economic and infrastructural development of a particular state. Capitals are sometimes relocated for several reasons, like the United States, relocated from New York City to Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. to appease Southerners with Union and the Confederacy and colonial America. Or I'm sorry, in new U.S. United States American history. Brazil has Ford capital. They move it inland from Rio de Janeiro to Brasilia. Same with Nigeria. These are called Ford capitals. They move them in to eliminate primate cities or underdevelopment, lack of infrastructure, and they usually move it inward so they can develop the infrastructure so there's adequate housing for everyone, and transportation systems that are more elaborate and efficient. What are most U.S. capitals? You said center. That is correct for communication. And again, they moved it inland to provide better infrastructure, social transportation networks, and also communication that's equidistant to the borders, so it diminishes distance decay. And Ottawa is going to be situated in the center again for communication and movement of transportation goods and commodities. Here are states, other separation. These are called physical boundaries. You have deserts, mountains, and water. There are cultural boundaries. Geometric is the most common boundary found on the global landscape. Religion is another boundary, such as the religious boundary between Pakistan and India, and the language boundary, like we talked about with the Wallons and Flemish in Belgium. Frontiers are uninhabited areas, usually found in desert countries like North Saharan Desert or the Arabian Desert. Here's an example of a frontier in the Arabian Desert. 6.5, discuss how boundaries can cause conflict. Your ICANN statements describe the contrasting characteristics of federal and unitary governments, define supranationalism, describe world economic supranational organizations today. How do we divide states, or how do states divide internally? They divide themselves to distribute political power on various scales, national power to state power to local power. Unitary states, the majority of the power is in the central government. Works well in nation states. Was common in Europe, and really it is derives from the evolution of states in nation-state building in Europe. So there was a dominant ruling ethnicity. Many European countries are switching to federal states, moving away from unitarian states. Federal states are where you share power amongst many levels, most notably is the federal level and local level. Federalism in the United States gives power to both the federal level and the state level and the local and county levels. And federal states work great for multinational and multi-linguist states. All right, so we can see in Mexico they have statehood, so there's federalism. This shows us, again, federalism, division. We can see with the division of a large state into smaller subdivisions. All these are federal states. In China, federalism. Why do states cooperate? In the 1900s, it was military alliance, especially through the mid-1900s with the Cold War and the tension between the two superpowers, the U.S. and USSR. Alliances help provide a balance of power. NATO was started as a supranational organizations of allied powers from World War II that wanted to stop the spread of the Soviet Union and their land acquisition. And the Warsaw Pact countered NATO, and that was the alliance of Eastern European countries and the Soviet Union. And the Warsaw Pact was to counter with a military alliance of the aggression of NATO. Supranational organizations are a collection of many countries that come together. They're alliances that serve economic and political interests. The United Nations is the largest supranational organization. United Nations does a lot besides economic and political cooperation. They also provide humanitarian need. They also provide education for women around the world. Again, they provide many different forms of alliances and cooperations. And European Union is a large economic cooperation of Western European countries, and now more recently Eastern European countries joining the EU. And then NAFTA, which has now been renamed under the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, pretty much the same thing. It's just to provide economic alliances between Canada, U.S., and Mexico. This shows the balance of power. Again, United Nations, over 192 countries are members today. They keep peace. They improve global living conditions, humanitarian rights, and they provide mediation for global discourse. Headquartered in New York City. States mostly cooperate economically today in the global economy. The leading economic power is European Union, 27 members. They promote human rights, mostly economic development and cultural development. They see Europe as one, not historically divided nations. So they try to squash all relics of historical wars. Many European countries seek membership today. Non-members include Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, and most recently Britain. It shows you a picture of European Union and the countries in Europe that comprise membership. And that's the end. That's a wrap.